Hi, everyone. It's Kyle Alexander Morgan, the host of the Original Sin podcast. We're brought to you today by True Crime Story 911. Today, we're speaking to Ruby Roberson Hall. Ruby's here today to speak about her missing sister, Elisa Roberson. Elisa disappeared on August 6, 1989. Hi, Ruby. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you, Alexander?
I'm doing okay. You want to start by telling me about your family background, and you sent me some information on your family background and where you moved to and where this happened.
Sure. So my mom was born in Bluefields, Nicaragua, and my dad was born in Texas. And so he was living in South Texas in Aransas Pass at the time. He was a shrimper. He was working for Gulf King shrimping company, and the shrimping industry in South Texas at the time was booming. And so my dad worked for them, and they often took their ships down they did a lot of shrimping down on the coast of where my mom was from, on the coast of Nicaragua. And so he had to go for his boss sent him over to go either pick up some shrimping boats, or something. He had to go down there, and that's how they met. And my mom at that time already had Elisa. Elisa's dad, when shortly after Elisa was born, he went to work in Costa Rica, and then the irony of it is he disappeared, and nobody ever heard from him. So everybody assumed that he was deceased, and so that's how my mom ended up alone with Elisa, and she met my dad. And he was only there for about, I think, 2 or 3 weeks. Wasn't there for very long. So when it was time for him to come back, he told my mom, he said, "Let's, come with me." And he didn't know at the time that she had a little girl, because where my mom worked, you had to travel through like by canoe, and it was dangerous. And so my mom would go into like the city part of where she was from, and would leave Elisa with her mom. So he wasn't aware she had this little girl. And
Okay.
When he asked her that, she said, "I have to tell you, I have a little girl, and if I come with you, she comes with me too." So he said absolutely, and he adopted my sister, and that's why Elisa was his daughter. And so that's how we ended up in Aransas Pass, Texas.
Okay.
Mhm.
And that's where Elisa disappeared from.
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell me about Elisa, who she was, who she is?
Yes. Elisa she was so funny. I mean, I just remember she had a little nickname as a child. We called her dientes pelados, and in Spanish it means your teeth are always peeled because you're always laughing. And so she was just always laughing. She had these beautiful cheeks, and her face just kind of beamed when she laughed. And she had this beautiful black hair just kind of flowed down. And she was the oldest, so she had that responsibility of being the oldest, and kind of watching over the youngest one. So she was a little mother hen. She helped my mom a lot because my mom didn't speak Spanish or didn't speak English. So when she first came to the States, Elisa was her translator. Anytime my mom went to any kind of appointments, and Elisa was kind of the one that kept us all in check. If we were misbehaving, she would tell us, "Hey, you need to listen to mom." And then in the late 80s, she was listening more to rock and roll, and
Mm-hmm.
watching MTV, and doing the friendship bracelets, pegging the pants. Like, she was a true product of the 80s. Like, she was just so much fun. And I just always wanted to be around her, and was tagging along everywhere she went.
Okay. So, can you tell us what happened leading up to her disappearance?
Yeah, so it was the summer. Every summer was just so much fun. As you can imagine. And in those days, we did a lot. We'd ride our bikes around. It was fun to ride our bikes, and we would stay out. It seemed like we spent so much more time outdoors back then. And so, of course, it was the summer. Elisa had her friends. She was 13, so she was getting to that age where she was kind of wanting her a little more independence. And so, it wasn't as much. I had my friends. Elisa had her friends, and so we kind of. She was growing up, and that weekend, that Saturday night, she had spent the night with a friend of hers, her best friend, and spent the next day with her. And they had planned to go to evening services church, and we had a little bus the bus would come pick up the kids from in the neighborhood.
Okay.
And she had planned to go. It was the bus had stopped at probably about 5:15, 5:20 over at Charlotte's house. And at the last minute, Elisa just decided she wanted to come home. And her house was just about maybe 10 minutes from our house, not very far, if even that.
Okay.
And so she walked home, probably would have put her home about 5:30. And then shortly after, another little friend called and asked if she could come over. And at that point, my mom had told her it was starting to get late and that she needed to stay home. But her friend said, hey, if I walk, I can meet you halfway, and then my dad can take you home, so you don't have to walk at night or in the dark. And my mom agreed to it. So off Elisa went. It was a matter of a few minutes, and then she left to go meet with her friend. It would have just been a little 6-minute walk to the school.
But she never arrived at the school?
She never arrived.
Okay. So something happened between her walking from her house to school.
Yes, short little 6-minute walk, and you just don't realize in that little short 6 minutes, your entire life is going to change. And it's sometimes it's hard to wrap your head around, how close she was. It was such a small neighborhood, literally and figuratively. Literally, the houses were closer together, and we knew, everybody knew each other. She even talked to some neighbors as she was walking to meet her friend, and so everybody knew her, and we'd walked that road hundreds of times, and it just, it was just, it's hard to conceive how that happened.
Okay. And so Alicia, on August 6th of it was 1989, she just disappeared without a trace.
Yes. When we went to her little friend, wasn't there.
Ruby, you're breaking up. Can you say that one more time?
Okay. So when the little friend had another friend with her, there were two of them that were walking to meet Lisa. And when they got to the school, she wasn't there. And so they thought, well, maybe they missed her and she hadn't quite left the house yet. So they kept walking, and the neighbors that saw her, saw Elisa pass. They saw Debbie, because everybody knew, all the little kids in the neighborhood. And so they saw Debbie, and they told her, she said, oh, have you seen Elisa pass? And they said, yeah, she passed. And she said she was going to meet you. She went that way. And then Debbie turned around and went back to the school, thinking that maybe Elisa was there and she missed her or was talking to another friend. Of course, Elisa wasn't there, so she headed back home. It was before cell phones, so she had to go all the way back home, and her house was a little further. So she went back home, and that's when she called us and asked if Elisa was at her house, if she had left yet.
Right.
And I remember my mom in the background. She was in the kitchen. I was on the couch when I answered the phone, and she heard me, and she heard I was talking to Debbie, and I says, well, Elisa left, and she's not here. And then my mom in the background said, I think in a shock, she kind of shouted, well, tell Debbie she should be with her right now, because she had left long. There had been enough, quite a bit of time that had passed,
right,
that she should have been with her. And I think it shocked my mom right from the beginning. And when she piped up in the background, to me, I thought, oh, well, she's probably just talking to another friend. And that's what I told her. She's probably with another friend talking, I would just go back to the school. And Debbie said, okay, I'm going to go back and look for her again. And a short time later, she called our house again and said, asked again, well, is Elisa there by chance? We said no. And she said, okay, I'm going to wait for my dad to get home. And when he comes home, we're going to go look for Elisa. And at that point, my mom told me to start calling all of Elisa's friends. And that's how we found out that the neighbors kitty cornered to us, really good friends of hers. There was 3 of them in the house, and they actually talked to Elisa. She passed. And that's how we found out that they had seen her, and that she had passed. So it was just hectic. And sometime later, Debbie with her dad and the little friend come to the house, and they say, they asked us, is Elisa here? And we said no. And what struck me as odd is that Bob Green, or the little friend's dad, they had gone to the Dairy Queen to get an ice cream cone.
Mm-hmm.
And they all had an ice cream cone, and they brought an ice cream cone for Elisa. And that always kind of struck me as really, odd, in a time when you're looking for a child to stop and get ice cream. Like, it was just the strangest thing. And her dad asked, well, is Elisa here? And we said no. And then at that point he said, Marina, you need to call the police. And then we called the police.
Marina is your mom.
Yes,
Okay.
my mom. Actually, he always called her Mrs. Roberson. And he said, Miss Roberson, you need to call the police. And so we were able to get some records, and it shows that the call came in. The initial call was made by me, and it came in at 9:49 p.m. And the words on it was, my sister hasn't come home yet, and my mom would like a police officer to come talk to us. And so that was the beginning of a nightmare that just, it's just lasted 35 years.
Wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And when the police came, what did they do when they arrived?
Well,
at
it
your
was
house?
one officer that came out. His name was Officer Winkle. And I remember when he took the report, I just remember how there didn't seem to be an urgency. It was, what I remember him telling my mom is, oh, she's probably just with a friend and she'll come home. And we didn't know it at the time, but it had been, he had filed the report as a runaway. And so nothing was taken seriously that night. And I just remember that night, stayed up all night and looking at the window, just pacing the floors. It was just a sad, horrible feeling, and just couldn't do anything. There was nothing to do, and we didn't know what to do. And you're beside yourself, and you're thinking any minute she's going to walk through that door.
Right.
And she never did. And it was horrible. And the next morning, my mom figured, well, the police didn't come because she had expected somebody else would come, or they would be searching, or something would start. And so she, very next morning, first thing that morning, the police station at the time was close to our home. So and we didn't have a car. Everything was within walking distance. And she got ready, and us kids, it was 3 of us in tow, went over to the police station. And Lieutenant Linda Thompson at the time, she's retired now, but she was over the juvenile division. And anytime there was any incident or anything that had to do with the juvenile, she was to be notified immediately. And that until the next morning, she had seen my mom with all us kids, and Elisa was not there. And she knew our family. It's a small town. And so she knew, Elisa was my mom's translator, and everywhere my mom went, there Elisa was. And when she didn't see Elisa, she said she felt like she'd been kicked by a mule, because she knew in that moment something really bad had happened. And right when we had walked in, they were handing her the report of the weekend report of what had transpired. And she had a chance to look at it when we walked in, and they handed it to her. And that's when everything just kind of started happening real fast after that.
Okay. Let's take a break. This is Kyle Xander Morgan. Thank you for watching this episode of the Original Sin Podcast. Make sure that you watch or listen to this episode to the very end. And also, if you appreciate us doing this kind of content, let us know by gently tapping that like and subscribe button. Now let's dive right back into this interesting episode. Thanks so much. We appreciate you. When you say things happen real fast, what happened next?
Yeah, so immediately we were taken into rooms, and of course, talking, the police wanted, we're giving them the report, all the information. They're talking to the, I remember being questioned too as a kid. And I remember Debbie and Bob, at some point, I'm assuming they must have called them and asked them to come in, because we didn't, we didn't, I don't think we talked to them that morning. But I know that Bob, or Bob and Debbie had come in, her little friend and her dad. And I remember sitting in the lobby, and at one point, her dad is visibly upset, and he walks out and he tells his daughter, "Let's go. We're out of here. Let's go." And he walked out really fast. And I couldn't understand. I thought, what's going on? Why is he upset? And then I remember, and time gets kind of skewed when it's been 35 years.
Right.
The next memory I have then is the police are at our house. They're going through my sister's things. They're going through her room. They took I remember specifically a hairbrush. They wanted some hair, and they took some clothing of hers that they wanted to have a scent for the dogs that they were going to be calling in. And they took some shoes, they took a diary. I remember brown paper bags, and they're putting these things in there. It felt like your home is being invaded. You've got all these people in there you don't know, cops and, in and around, your house. That they have to do what they have to do, but it just was so surreal.
Right.
And then I remember so many people, I remember friends and family coming to help. We didn't have family there, but our friends were basically our family. We had some really close friends, and my dad was on a shrimping boat in the Gulf of Mexico, so they had to radio him in. He couldn't get in right away. I think it took a couple of days for him to get in. And so I just remember immediately my family went to work. We started, we went to the newspaper to put a flyer in there, or to get not a flyer, her picture posted on the newspaper. I remember I found out later that our good friends they were really good friends of my little sister. They loved her, and the dad had actually gone and put flyers together, passed them out.
Is this Debbie's father?
No.
Or someone else's?
There were there was the house. I told you there were 3 people at the outside who had talked to Elisa.
Right.
It was Tom Pierce was the dad. The daughter was Jennifer, and the little son was Nathan. And Elisa and Nathan were like on again, off again, little crush, boyfriend, girlfriend thing. So she would spend time with the family, go over there. They loved her. And I would go over with Elisa too. And they were the ones that went and made several flyers and started passing them out.
Okay.
We then found out also another neighbor said, "Oh, I saw Elisa, when she left your house," because they had a window that faced our home at the time, or they could see our house, their kitchen window. They were washing dishes, and they said they saw her. And so my mom and my family, we're going down alleyways, looking in dumpsters, looking in abandoned houses. You've heard rescued when there are things here. You've got helicopters. I mean, so much was going on. Police explorers going door to door, talking to people. You name it. The police at our house. There were dogs. There were cadaver dogs, bloodhounds, and every dog that was brought in followed her scent to the same spot, and it was the intersection of Whitney and 8th Street, right past Keiberger Elementary School. We believe at that intersection was where someone she knew and trusted offered her a ride, and she got in, because that's where her scent just kind of goes cold.
Okay. I wanted to ask you who the suspects were that the police thought maybe that she went with.
Mm-hmm. Well, so I always try to tread lightly, because this is really a sensitive topic. But the original detectives early on believed that Bob Green, the father of Debbie, was responsible for Elisa's disappearance.
And that's the one that brought the ice cream.
Yes.
Okay, stopped and get the ice cream after he had found out that your sister was missing.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so early on, they were good friends of ours. We had no reason to believe that we for a long time we had a hard time grasping it, because we just always saw Mr. Green as just a really nice man, and they were friends of the family. We were close to them also, and it was hard. It was hard to wrap our head around that. Years later, we found out things that we just didn't know about. And there were things we had heard about, but, you're a child and you don't know what, you're hearing things you don't really understand. So years later, we did find out that he had some, tendencies towards children, some, and that he also was charged with indecency with the child. But we didn't know at the time. And my mom early on, he had a boy who was very very physically abusive towards her, and he was also involved in criminal activity, drugs. He was just a dangerous person, and she was trying to get away from him for so long, and it seemed like no matter what she did, he just always came back, and she was very threatened by him. She felt that he was going to kill her and or was going to hurt one of her children. And he made a lot of promises. He told her at the end when she just kept telling him, don't come back. And he threatened that, he's going to do something to her, that she's always going to remember him. It's a pretty serious threat. And it was shortly after that Elisa disappeared. So
and
for
that
a long
was
time,
your mother's ex-boyfriend.
Yes.
And what was his name?
It was Ralph Rivas Gonzalez.
Okay.
I'm
sorry, go ahead.
For a long time, she believed it was him because, he was the one that caused the most damage to our family. He did some horrible things to my mom and to us children. And, who are you going to look at? You're going to look at the person who's threatened you, who's hurt you the most, who's made good on his threats before. He's a dangerous person and a violent person. So why wouldn't he? He was also a pedophile. And so it was always, it's still in the back of our minds. It's hard to say for sure one or the other. We just know that we know for sure that one was very capable. And then when we found out years later the extent of Bob Green's tendencies towards children, then we understood and we realized, he could have done it. And I remember early on, within I would say days, Debbie and her mom actually told my mom and me that they believed that their dad was involved, that Bob was involved somehow. And they said he was acting very suspicious and odd. He didn't come home for dinner at the right time. And they said it was just very suspicious and that he's not the person that everyone thinks he is. And so it was hard for us to wrap our head around it because we just saw a nice old Mr. Green, but now finding out what we know, it sounds like he very well could have been capable of doing that as well. So it's hard to know. But there was never an official suspect named. However, the police did early on tell my mom, look, we believe it's Bob. And we don't believe they looked into Ralph, but they didn't believe it was him. And they also were able to confirm that he was in a Mexican prison at the time.
Okay.
But it's always been a question because he had a lot of connections. He had a brother that was actually a prison guard at the time, or he was a police officer or prison guard or something in Mexico. And because of his connections and his, we just feel that he might have been able to pull anything off. And we're not saying he necessarily did it himself. He had people who could have done it for him. And being the type of person he was, he wouldn't want to get his hands dirty. He would want to steer as far away possible as he could. But then again, the original detectives believed it was Ralph or believed it was Bob, and they have their reasons, and they've talked to us, and what they say to us also makes sense. And we, Linda and I are very good friends, and she's kind of Linda Thompson, the original detective, and we've been able to talk a lot about why she believed he did it in depth, and I trust her. So I trust her and I believe her when she says that she felt strongly it was Bob. So it's just hard. It's really hard to know. And yeah.
Where is Bob Green now?
Bob Green is it's either a rest home or a nursing home in Iowa. He's 93 years old. He was born in 1929.
Okay. And what is the status of the case of your missing sister right now?
As far as I know, because I've been able to have a little bit of a dialogue with Chief Eric Blanchard with the Aransas Pass Police Department, but I think it's more, I want to say I believe him when he says he wants to help, but I also I believe actions speak louder than words. And when you say this this means as much to you, and you want this resolved as much as we do, but yet your actions don't show that when you put people off, or you tell them one thing and say, well, I'm going to read into it next week, there's going to be some, and then week after week after week after week after week passes, and you hear nothing back. And
Right.
we have nothing to hide, and we've tried really hard to get a dialogue with Captain Rhodes. And I don't know where it stands, because they're very tight-lipped about it. And I understand that there are things that law enforcement can't tell you when there's an active investigation, they say, quote unquote. But yet the last time anything was in 2016, and what happened there, we believe was I don't even know what the word is. It's like we stepped into the twilight zone, because we found ourselves being accused, our family being accused of, my mom was being accused of having something to do with Elisa's disappearance. And I was accused by the police department of covering for my mom, and that I needed to come clean, and I needed to open up and tell them what happened to my sister.
And that's
So
what they
here we
told
go.
you?
I'm sorry?
That's what they told you at the time?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Texas Ranger Tony DeLuna and Captain Kyle Rhodes. At that time, they had, Texas EquiSearch, former Lieutenant Linda had reached out to Texas EquiSearch asking if they would be willing to offer their services to do, for us to use their ground penetrating radar to search some properties of Bob Green.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, yes, certainly. And this is when they reached out to me and started talking to me. And Linda was talking to them. And they went down to the police department. Chief Blanchard was there, Captain Kyle Rhodes. And they were just treated like garbage. And at the end of the day, they basically pushed them out instead of asking them, please, we need anything you can tell us. They're the original detectives on the case, Linda and Mike Thompson, their husband and wife team at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And they just kind of took it over. And then next thing you know, our old home, our childhood home, is being searched. And they're bringing cadaver dogs, and we're hearing all this on the news. They're talking about a new break in the case and new leads on the case. And it was just this news story after news story about this break. They're going to find something missing, and that possible remains are in this home.
Right.
And you hear all that, and then silence. They're done, and they don't offer a statement. Texas EquiSearch won't offer a statement. The police department won't, even though that's standard police procedure, right? When you say you're searching for remains, and then they say nothing. And I spoke to Captain Kyle Rhodes at the time, and I asked him about it, and all he told me was they found what they believed to be human remains, and that they would be sending these to a lab for testing. And he assured me that within days, is what he told me, there was going to be an arrest made. And he's implying our family. And so here we have 2016, and it's 8 years later, still no word, still nothing. As far as we know, the people who own the home, nothing was found, nothing was recovered. And we just want to know, tell us the results of, we did find out that in September, Captain Rhodes went to the city council and reported that he had, reported on the Elisa Roberson investigation, and that they had sent some soil samples to be tested to Texas A&M University. And that was in 2016. And we want to know what happened in 8 years. Tell me what's been done, what happened, and tell
Right.
us. We want answers. When your family gets accused of something like that, it's the most awful feeling, to have to deal with the loss and the disappearance and not knowing, but then to be accused. And as far as I know, Chief Blanchard did speak to Dateline NBC Cold Case Spotlight, and he did tell them within a month or two there's going to be more movement on the case. But he told us that a month ago that within a week or two he was going to. So it's hard to know. Actions speak louder than words, and we haven't seen anything. And so we don't think, really, honestly, we just feel like we're just being they kind of tell us what we want to hear at the time. And I think Chief Blanchard plays a politician to try to keep peace, but I don't know. I don't know what the, I can only tell you what we're doing as a family.
Mm-hmm.
we've done a lot of, we've got a friend who is a government, retired government investigator who's been helping our family, and we're good friends. We've known him for about 20 years. So he's been helping off and on since 2009. And of course, life happens, life changes. So you can't focus on it all the time, 100% of the time. But
Right.
He's been doing his own investigation, asking, searching. I've been doing a lot of the advocacy, the podcast, reaching out to the cold case foundations, advocacy groups, the different shows, news broadcasts, anything and everything to kind of bring awareness to Elisa's case. So that's what we're doing. And we also have an attorney Stephen Kerrigan has been helping us, because we feel at this point, it's 35 years. We feel now it's time to hand over those case files to the family, and it's only fair. They've had 35 years, and we feel it's our turn now. So they don't want to hand that to us. And Steve Kerrigan has fought with for another family in the area, and was able to get the case files for their murdered loved ones. It was a mom and dad that were murdered, and he won that case. So we thought, well, let's just see. Of course, it's slow going, so I have to be very patient at times, because it could be very frustrating.
So when did he start this with the trying to get the case files from the police or your new attorney?
So I would almost say it was probably October of last year. It's just been a really slow going. So he's already filed it, and then then it came back. He had to refile it again. And what he's trying to do is, have an open dialogue. I don't know that they're even willing to talk to him to kind of say, let's come to some kind of agreement. Let's kind of meet in the middle. But it just seems very, they're kind of digging their heels in. So we don't know what's gonna come of that at the end. But we would like a review, and I've reached out to the Texas Rangers and a few other places and people asking for a formal review of the case, because we just feel they're not really they've got other things that they have to worry about. They don't have the time. There's new crimes they have to try to solve. I get it. They could, but at the end of the day, who's going to fight harder for a loved one than their family? So if we can have that, then we're fighting harder for her, and we're taking the time, and we're doing that, and we're more than happy to continue doing that.
So when was the last time that you actually had any kind of like open dialogue with the police or the chief of police?
Sure. So we were down there. We were down in Aransas Pass this August 6th. It was the 35th anniversary of Elisa's disappearance. And we went down, and I reached out to the chief, and I reached out to the chief and the captain, and the chief was able to meet with us. And it was me, my mom, my brother, my husband, Richard, our friend, who's the retired government investigator. We all went in together, and we talked to Chief Blanchard, and we felt like maybe we made a little bit of progress, because sometimes when you're emailing or calling, when you see someone's face, there's a difference. When you see someone's face, when you don't know someone and you're emailing them, it's easy to be short. It's easy to be snarky or crass, which I've felt that on his end, and I've been that way too, because it's frustrating. But when you meet someone face to face, there's more of a humanity element. You can see their pain, you can see their expressions, you can see that there's really pain and hurt. And this family really loves we love Elisa, and we want her to come home, and we're just fighting for justice. So I felt it was a positive step when he was willing to meet with us. We also spoke with the DA. So I felt it was very positive, because we're showing our face. We're saying we're not afraid. We're here to challenge, and we're here to try to bridge a gap, hoping that they'll, be willing to just meet us halfway, but it's just not happening. And so
the outcome was a negative outcome, or they just didn't say anything?
It felt very positive. It felt like he was listening to us, and he was taking our oh, there you are. I wasn't able to felt like he took our concerns, he validated them. So it felt like he was listening to us, and he really wanted to help us as a family. It felt very assuring at the time. And he said he would like to review the case, and he would like to meet with Captain Rhodes. But he did say that would take like a week or two, and that was the beginning of August. And so we've been waiting.
August of this year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes. And so I've reached out every week, and it's always, oh, I'm too busy. I have other things to do, basically, so it just doesn't feel like it's as important to them as it is, our family. Like, I don't
Right.
know. I don't know. I guess we'll just keep trying and keep pushing and see what, at least there's a dialogue, which I appreciate. I really do appreciate, because they can be a lot of families I've spoken to, they don't even talk to them. They won't even they won't return their calls or their emails. So at least there's a little bit of a dialogue going there. So I will give him credit for that.
Okay. So, what do you personally think happened to Alicia? Do you think that it was Bob Green, like the
Mhm.
police originally thought? Do you think that could have been Ralph Gonzalez? What do you think in your mind happened to Alicia at that intersection?
Sure. It's just so hard, because I can picture both scenarios. Both scenarios are I've played them out in my head over and over again, so I could see both of them. And again, my experience with Ralph was he was very dangerous and very violent, and he hurt my family so deeply. He hurt my mom and us children. He hurt us so deeply. And it's my natural inclination is to go towards Ralph, because I grew up with him. I saw what he did to us, to my mom, and he almost killed her several times. And as little kids, we witnessed some things that little kids should never witness. And
So there was
he did.
domestic violence
Mhm.
between Ralph
Yeah,
and your
he beat
mom.
my mom. Yeah, he beat my mom horribly. I mean, and we're not talking little slaps or, grabs. I mean, these are like full on attacks, choking, kicking, punching, pulling hair, bloody, bruised. And my mom would call the police, and it just seemed like he always got away with it. There were never any repercussions. And he would always make comments about how you could call the police all you want, but I've got guardian angels in the police department. They work for me. And so that would make us think, oh, so then my mom became distrustful of the police. And so there was no point then in calling the police, because they would see her bloodied and bruised, and he would never get arrested, and he would come back and he would say, you called the police, so here's another beating. So it's
Right.
my natural inclination is to kind of go towards Ralph. He was a criminal. He got away with a lot. There was one time my mom was watching a news report, and they were talking about a woman who had been murdered in the area. And my mom said Ralph was watching the news, and as soon as the newscast was over, he gets up and he shaves his mustache. And my mom, in the back of her head, said, oh, he probably had something to do with this woman murder. So she knew he was dangerous. He did try to kill her. There were a couple other incidents where he told her she was a threat to his friends, don't like her, and she's a threat to him and his. My mom just, Ralph was dangerous. She just knew. So it was our natural inclination would be to go think it was Ralph. But Bob Green was also a pedophile. He did some horrible things, and we didn't find out the extent of what he did until years later. So he's also very, very much on our list. We haven't crossed anyone out, and we're just right now we're doing our own investigation, because we have no choice at this point but to do it ourselves. And so we're taking the bull by the horns, and we're doing everything we can as a family, to advocate and do our own. We have to. There's no one else. And wonderful people like you and other people who advocate for missing loved ones, missing and murdered loved ones, is just, we appreciate anybody who's willing to listen, to get the story out, to be heard.
Thank you. Appreciate that. One final question, and I wanted to ask you, after all this time, do you believe that Alicia is still alive?
No, at this point, we know. I mean, the reality of it is, she's not alive. We don't believe she's alive. After 35 years, you just become resolved. Your sister's gone, your loved one's gone, and so we know she's not with us anymore. We know spiritually she's with us. We felt her. We felt her presence throughout our lives, and so we don't believe she's alive. And so we believe it's a matter of finding where she is, and if we can, people who work with unidentified remains, it would be wonderful to any kind of help for any remains that were found in that area, to get some testing done, DNA testing, so that we can find out maybe there might be some hope that she's been found and just hasn't been identified.
Okay. Well, Ruby, thank you very much for coming on our show. Really hope that you get a resolution to this with your sister, that you're able to get some DNA testing done and see if your sister's remains have been found in that area and haven't been identified. And we would just wish you and your family the best.
Thank you so much. And anybody who'd like to support our family, we have a Facebook page, and it's Missing Elisa Roberson. And so any support, we also have two petitions that we put out so that we're trying to get as many signatures to get the Aransas Pass Police Department to review the case, and to another one to hand over those case files. And so we've got those two petitions, and we've got a $20,000 reward for any information in the resolution of this case. And so please join us and help us. We appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, and you have a great day.
You as well. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.